You never think you'll be that woman, the one who trades in a stable life for a whirlwind romance. But there I was, Laura Bennett, a once grounded CEO, diving headfirst into an affair that turned my world upside down. My husband, Michael, was the epitome of reliability, an accountant with a love for spreadsheets that rivaled his affection for me. We had a comfortable life, a routine that some might call monotonous, but it was our normal. Yet inside, I felt a void, a yearning for something more. Then came Jake. I met him at a business conference. He was the keynote speaker, oozing charisma and confidence, a sharp contrast to Michael's reserved demeanor. He was younger, in his 30s, with a zest for life that was infectious. One conversation led to another, and before I knew it, I was swept up in his world. Our affair was a secret whirlwind of passion and excitement. I'd sneak away for clandestine meetings, my heart racing with every stolen kiss. For the first time in years, I felt alive, invigorated. It was reckless, I knew, but I couldn't help myself. The decision to leave Michael wasn't easy, but in my mind, it was necessary. I convinced myself that Jake was my ticket to happiness, a chance to relive the youth I felt I'd missed. When I broke the news to Michael, his reaction was one of quiet devastation. There were no dramatic pleas or angry outbursts. He simply accepted my decision with a calmness that was almost unnerving. Moving in with Jake was like stepping into a different world. Luxurious vacations, extravagant dinners, and a lifestyle that I'd only seen in magazines. But this new life came with a cost. Jake had expensive tastes that began to strain my finances. The business class flights, designer clothes, the constant dining out. It all added up, and my bank account was taking the hit. As I lay awake at night, the gravity of my decisions weighed on me. Had I made a monumental mistake? My life with Michael had been stable, if unexciting. But this new life with Jake, while thrilling, was unsustainable. And deep down, I knew it. This chapter sets the stage for Laura's tumultuous journey, highlighting her internal conflict and the consequences of her choices. It establishes the key characters and their dynamics, setting up the narrative for further development and drama. The truth hit me like a freight train. Jake, the man I had sacrificed everything for, was a mirage. A beautiful, charming facade, hiding a mountain of debt and a history of preying on women like me. Wealthy, older, and evidently gullible. I confronted him, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. How could you? I demanded, brandishing the stack of unpaid bills and letters from angry creditors I had found. Jake, however, was unflappable. His response was a masterclass in deflection and charm. But I wasn't buying it anymore. The revelation shattered something inside me. Desperate for a semblance of my former life, I reached out to Michael, my ex-husband. I wanted to apologize, to explain, maybe even to beg. But Michael, once the epitome of patience and understanding, was ice cold. "I can't," was all he said, shutting the door on any hope of reconciliation. Then came the blow that knocked the wind out of me. My job, my career. Gone. The affair had not only cost me my marriage, but had now tainted my professional reputation. The board was unanimous in their decision. I was out. The irony of it all was that my career was what had made me attractive to Jake in the first place. With my personal and professional life in ruins, I turned to Jake, hoping for support. Instead, I found myself trapped in a nightmare. The once charming man turned controlling, even abusive. The luxury and excitement that had drawn me to him now felt like gilded chains. I knew I had to leave, but Jake was always one step ahead. He had information on me, private things that could destroy what little I had left. I felt trapped, a prisoner in a life I had chosen but no longer wanted. Then, as if fate hadn't laughed at me enough, I heard about Michael's engagement. He had moved on to a younger, kinder woman. It was a harsh reminder of what I had lost, a life that now seemed like a distant dream. The friends I thought I had, people I had known for years, turned their backs on me. I had become a social pariah, the woman who threw away her perfect life for a fling. Their judgment was silent but clear. In this chapter of my life, I was alone. Surrounded by the debris of my shattered dreams, with nowhere to turn. The glamorous life I had chosen with Jake was nothing but a beautifully wrapped lie, and I was its prisoner. I always thought I knew Jake, but that day, standing in the dim light of a coffee shop, Jake's ex-partner Annie painted a picture so dark, it made my blood run cold. "He's dangerous, Laura," she warned, her eyes haunted with a fear I was beginning to understand all too well. Her words echoed in my head, a chorus of dread that I couldn't silence. The bombshell hit me just days later. I was pregnant. The realization should have brought joy, but in the twisted world I was trapped in with Jake, it felt like a chain tightening around my ankle. This wasn't just about me anymore. There was a new life, innocent and vulnerable, caught in the crossfire. Jake's grip on my life tightened, he demanded I cut off my family. It was about control, always control. He masked it under the guise of love, but it was about isolating me, keeping me under his thumb. I watched as the last threads connecting me to a world where I was loved and respected disintegrated. With my health spiraling, both physical and mental, I became a shadow of the woman I once was. The stress of living with a man whose love was a poison and the constant fear of his unpredictable temper left me weak, exhausted. I was losing myself, piece by piece. Then came the ultimate betrayal. Jake sold my assets, everything I had worked so hard for. He did it without a twinge of conscience, without my consent. My safety net, the last piece of my independence, gone. I felt utterly helpless, watching the last remnants of my old life slip away. As if to twist the knife deeper, Michael's wedding day dawned. I wasn't invited, of course, but I couldn't help myself. I watched from afar, hidden behind sunglasses and a scarf. There he was, starting a new chapter, looking happy and in love. It was a stark contrast to the prison of my own making. A tear slid down my cheek, not just for what I had lost, but for the pain of knowing it was all my doing. The final blow came unannounced. Jake's criminal activities came to light. Illegal dealings, shady connections. The man I shared my bed with was a stranger, his life a web of lies and danger. I was living with a criminal and now, carrying his child. This chapter of my life was a whirlwind of fear, betrayal and loss. My choices had led me here, to a place where I was trapped in a life I no longer recognized. With a man who was a monster in disguise. The walls were closing in, and I was running out of options. In the thick of my despair, I clung to a flicker of hope. Gathering evidence against Jake. I knew it was risky, threading through a maze of lies and deceit. But for my unborn child, I was willing to risk it all. My days turned into a covert mission. Documenting Jake's illicit activities, his temper, the threats. Each piece of evidence was a step towards our freedom. Out of the blue, I received a call. It was Emily, Michael's new wife. Her voice was warm, tinged with genuine concern. "I want to help you, Laura," she offered. Pride, however, has a way of twisting your arm to push away the very help you need. "I can handle this," I lied, dismissing her outstretched hand. My world crashed down when Jake discovered my secret plan. His reaction was volcanic. A terrifying eruption of anger and violence. The man I thought I knew, the man I had once loved, was a stranger fueled by rage. His aggression left me shattered, both in spirit and in body. The aftermath was a blur. The hospital, the white walls, the sympathetic glances of the nurses. I had lost the baby, a casualty of the turmoil that had become my life. The grief was a tidal wave, dragging me down into an abyss of despair. My baby, the only innocent part of this whole mess, was gone. As if my life wasn't complicated enough, I noticed something. Or rather, someone. A figure, always lurking in the shadows. At the grocery store, outside my window, always watching. Paranoia clawed at me, every stranger a potential threat. Was Jake behind this? Was this another level of his control, a way to keep me in line? The truth, when it finally came, was almost as shocking. The mysterious figure was a private investigator, but not Jake's. He was hired by Michael before our divorce, a silent guardian watching over me from a distance. Michael had seen the danger before I did, and in his own way tried to protect me. This chapter of my life was a testament to the consequences of choices made and the roads not taken. It was a journey through the darkest tunnels with glimmers of light, help offered, a protective eye that I had too often ignored. Now, with my world crumbling around me, I wondered if those glimmers were my last chance at salvation. The truth can be a bitter pill to swallow. That day, sitting across from the investigator in a nondescript coffee shop, I learned that Michael, my ex-husband, had known about Jake's sordid past all along. He had tried to warn me, to save me from the disaster I was so keen on running into. The revelation was a punch to the gut, a mix of betrayal and guilt swirling inside me. Fueled by a tumult of emotions, I confronted Michael. How could he have known and not made me listen? His response was a shock, not just in what he said, but how he said it. He showed me emails, texts, missed calls, desperate attempts to reach out. I'd been so blinded by the thrill of my affair with Jake that I had missed or ignored every single one of them. Michael's words struck a chord. I cared for you, Laura, more than you'll ever know. But I had to let you go, for my own peace. There was no malice in his voice, just a resignation to the painful truth. He had moved on, found happiness with someone else. And there I was, stuck in the ruins of the life I had chosen. Alone and cornered, I made a decision. It was time to flee, to leave the city and the mess I had created behind. A fresh start, or so I hoped. But as I soon discovered, escaping a past tangled in lies and danger wasn't going to be easy. Jake's world wasn't just filled with deceit and manipulation. It was darker, more dangerous than I ever imagined. His associates, the kind of people who operated in the shadows, had become a threat to my safety. I was a loose end, a potential risk to their operations. The day of my escape was supposed to be the start of something new. Instead, it turned into a nightmare. As I drove, trying to put as much distance as I could between myself and my old life, I realized I was being followed. A car, nondescript but persistent, was on my tail. Panic set in, my heart racing as I tried to lose them. Then it happened. A crash, sudden and violent as their car rammed into mine. Glass shattered, metal screeched, and the world spun wildly out of control. The last thing I remember was the blaring of a horn, the flash of lights, and then darkness. In this chapter of my life, I was a woman on the run. Not just from a failed relationship or a ruined career, but from a life that had turned dangerous. It was a journey of fear, betrayal, and desperation, an attempt to escape a world that I had naively walked into. But as I would soon learn, some ties are not so easily cut, and some pasts have a way of catching up with you no matter how fast you run. Waking up in a hospital bed with the sterile smell of antiseptics and the monotonous beeps of machines was like waking up to a new reality. The walls of the hospital room felt like the boundaries of my fallen world. There I was, Laura Bennett, once a high-flying CEO, now a broken woman both in body and spirit, my downfall complete. The news hit me in waves, each more crushing than the last. Jake, the man I had risked everything for, was arrested. His world of lies and deceit had finally caught up with him. But the nightmare didn't end there. I was implicated too. Despite my ignorance, my association with Jake had dragged me into his murky world of illegal activities. My public image, once the epitome of success and integrity, was in tatters. The media frenzy was relentless, painting me as the accomplice in Jake's criminal empire. Friends who had once celebrated my success now turned their backs, unwilling to associate with the scandal that clung to me like a shadow. In the midst of this storm, Michael visited. It was a strange and painful reunion. There was no warmth, just a formal politeness. He offered moral support, a gesture that felt like a band-aid over a gaping wound. Reconciliation was off the table, and his presence was a stark reminder of what I had lost. The trial was a spectacle my life laid bare for the world to scrutinize. The evidence against me was overwhelming, a mountain of accusations I could barely comprehend, let alone defend. My legal team fought valiantly, but the tide was against us. I reached out to my former colleagues, friends, anyone who might lend their support. But the response was a deafening silence. I was toxic, a pariah. Their abandonment was a bitter pill, each rejection a nail in the coffin of my former life. The turning point in the trial came with a witness I never expected. Annie, Jake's ex-partner. Her testimony was damning. She detailed Jake's operations with chilling clarity, and, to my horror, implicated me in the midst of it. Her words painted a picture of a partnership in crime, rather than the reality of my ignorance and manipulation. This chapter of my life was a stark contrast to the heights I had once reached. It was a story of downfall. Of a woman who had lost everything, her freedom, her reputation, her support system. As I lay in that hospital bed, facing the ruins of my life, I couldn't help but wonder how it all went so wrong, how the choices I made led me to this moment of utter desolation. The gavel hit with a finality that echoed through my very soul. Guilty, that word, delivered with a cold impartiality, sealed my fate. I, Laura Bennett, once a symbol of success and ambition, was sentenced to prison. The courtroom blurred into a sea of faces, some pained, some indifferent, as I was led away in handcuffs, my fall from grace complete. In the solitude of my cell, the magnitude of my choices hit me. The walls were cold, unyielding, much like the reality I now faced. My life had become a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes can change. I replayed the decisions, the mistakes, the moments of pride and weakness that had led me here. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had sought freedom in my choices, but found only a deeper imprisonment. The news of Michael's newborn child was a jolt, a piercing reminder of the life I had left behind. It was strange thinking of him as a father again, starting a new family while I languished in a cell. The pain was acute, a mix of loss and regret for the family we could have had, for the love I had so carelessly discarded. As if to mirror the decay of my inner world, my health began to decline. The stress, the harsh conditions of prison life, took their toll. Each day was a struggle, a battle against the physical and emotional toll of my incarceration. The vibrant, energetic woman I once was seemed like a distant memory, an image from another lifetime. Then one day a letter arrived. It was from Michael. His words were a balm to my aching soul. He wrote of forgiveness, of the pain he had endured, and the healing he had found. But with the kindness came a finality he would never reconcile with me. It was a closure, both kind and cruel. I was grateful for his forgiveness, but mourned the final severing of the bond we once shared. In this chapter of my life, I was a woman transformed by the consequences of her actions. The luxury, the freedom, the power I had once known were replaced by confinement, introspection, and a deep sense of loss. I lived in the shadows of the choices I had made, learning the hardest lessons in the most unforgiving of classrooms. As I lay in my prison bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder how different life could have been had I chosen a different path. The day Jake was sentenced, a part of me felt vindicated. He received a longer sentence, justice for the chaos he had wrought. But it was a hollow victory. There I was, Laura Bennett, still trapped behind bars, my life a shadow of what it once was. In my cell, I clung to the idea of writing a memoir, a cautionary tale, I thought, to warn others against the pitfalls of greed and reckless desire. I poured my heart onto those pages, detailing every mistake, every wrong turn. But the world wasn't interested in the confessions of a disgraced CEO. Publisher after publisher turned me down, unwilling to touch the story of a woman who had fallen so far from grace. Then came the revelation that knocked the wind out of me. Michael, my ex-husband, the man I had wronged and lost, had been orchestrating a subtle revenge all this time. He had been a silent player in my downfall, meticulously ensuring that justice was served while keeping his hands clean. The realization was a bitter pill, leaving a taste of betrayal and admiration in equal measure. Michael, whom I had underestimated, played the long game, ensuring that I reaped what I had sown. As my days in prison passed, the weight of my regrets grew heavier. I thought of Michael, moving on with his life, building a new family. There was a time when I would have been part of that picture, a time that now seemed like a distant dream. The story of Laura Bennett, once a tale of success and ambition, ended in the solitude of a prison cell, alone, full of regrets, haunted by the ghosts of choices past. My rise and fall were complete, a narrative of warning to those who dare tread the path I took. Outside, life moved on. Michael, with his new family, continued on a journey that once included me. And there I was, left behind, a forgotten chapter in his life, as he was once in mine. In this final chapter, I sat in my cell, the bars casting long shadows as the sun set. I reflected on the journey that brought me here, the highs and the lows, the love and the loss. My story was a testament to the consequences of our actions, a reminder that our choices define us, for better or for worse. As night fell on the prison, I closed my eyes, the silence around me a stark contrast to the life I once led. The end of my story was written, not with triumph, but with lessons learned in the hardest way. I never intended for it to go this far. My marriage to Jake had become a cycle of the same conversations, the same dinners, and the same silences. The excitement had faded into a comfortable yet suffocating routine. Then Michael walked back into my life like a scene straight out of a movie. But there was nothing romantic about the turmoil that followed. It was an ordinary Tuesday when I bumped into Michael at the local coffee shop. The surprise in his eyes mirrored mine in our casual, "How have you been?" quickly turned into a 2-hour conversation. We laughed, reminiscing about college days, and then the conversation shifted. We shared our dreams and frustrations, and I found myself opening up about my stagnant marriage. Michael listened, his eyes filled with an understanding that felt like a lifeline. We left the coffee shop with the promise to catch up again, but I didn't realize then how dangerous that promise was. Michael and I began texting. At first it was just funny memes and harmless updates, but soon our messages became the highlight of my day. He got me. It felt exhilarating to connect with someone on a level I hadn't realized I was missing. The justification for my growing attachment to Michael was simple. My marriage felt beyond repair. Jake and I were like roommates, polite strangers sharing a space. Michael offered an escape, a glimpse into a life filled with excitement and understanding. Our secret meeting started innocently enough. We told ourselves it was for a community project that didn't exist. We met at hidden cafes and quiet parks, places where our paths wouldn't cross with anyone we knew. Each meeting felt more thrilling than the last, a rebellion against the monotony of my life with Jake. Then one evening as we lingered over goodbyes, Michael kissed me. It was a moment suspended in time where all rational thought evaporated. I didn't stop him. That kiss marked the start of our affair, a secret kept from the world, especially from Jake. I found myself weaving a web of lies, each more elaborate than the last, to cover up my whereabouts. "I'm taking night classes," I told Jake, "or a friend needs my help." Each lie weighed on me, but the thrill of my secret with Michael pushed any guilt to the back of my mind. Looking back, I see how each choice was a step down a path that led to inevitable heartbreak. Yet in those moments, all I could see was the immediate escape Michael offered from a life I thought I no longer wanted. The day Michael gave me the necklace, everything changed. It was delicate, a silver chain with a pendant that caught the light in a way that mesmerized me. "For you," he said, his voice low, filled with a meaning I dared not decipher in the moment. I hid it in a sock drawer, a tangible symbol of our secret tucked away beneath layers of my ordinary life. But as the days passed, the weight of that necklace seemed to grow. Jake's eyes on me felt sharper, his questions more pointed. "You've been distant lately," he observed one evening, his voice tinged with a suspicion I hadn't heard before. Is everything okay at work? I brushed off his concerns with a hollow laugh and an assurance that all was well, but the lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Our home, once a sanctuary, became a minefield. Jake's casual inquiries about my day felt like interrogations. In a moment of frustration, he finally confronted me. Are you hiding something from me? His question caught me off guard, my heart pounding in response. Why would you even ask that? Don't you trust me? I countered, deflecting his concern with indignation. But inside, a part of me screamed in guilt. Michael and I, meanwhile, grew bolder in our folly. We met openly, laughing too loudly in cafes, our hands lingering in shared glances that spoke volumes. It was a reckless display, one that caught the eye of a close friend who pulled me aside one day. What are you doing? She hissed, her worry evident. You're playing with fire, I shrugged off her warning, too caught in the moment's thrill to heed her words. Then, one day, the inevitable happened. Jake found the receipt for the necklace, a slip of paper that felt like a grenade in our life. Where did this come from? He asked, holding it out to me with a steady hand. My mind raced as I scrambled for a lie. Oh, that? It's from a friend. She knew I was having a tough time. The words felt flimsy even as I spoke them, and I could see the doubt clouding his eyes. Tension thickened the air between Jake and me. A palpable barrier that neither of us could breach. He withdrew, wrapping himself in a silence that felt like a preemptive goodbye. I, on the other hand, delved deeper into my secret world with Michael, clinging to it as if it were a lifeline. But in truth, it was more of an anchor, dragging me further away from the life I once knew and deeper into a sea of deceit. The day Michael gave me the ultimatum was the day my world tilted on its axis. It's him or me, he said, his voice firm, eyes searching mine for a decision I wasn't ready to make. The gravity of his words pressed down on me, heavy with the promise of a future I had fantasized about but never truly considered the logistics of. Yet in that moment, faced with the possibility of losing him, I found my resolve. I chose Michael, convinced that he was my path to a happiness I hadn't felt in years. The decision to leave Jake felt like stepping into an abyss. The night before I confessed, I lay awake, rehearsing my words, imagining scenarios where Jake would plead with me to stay. I had convinced myself that our years together would evoke some desperate attempt to salvage our marriage. But reality has a cruel way of shattering delusions. I've been having an affair, I confessed the next day, my voice barely above a whisper. I waited for the anger, the tears, anything that would show me he still cared. Instead, Jake's response was devastatingly calm. Okay, he said, pausing as if weighing his next words carefully. You should pack your things and go. No anger, no pleading, just a simple request to leave. It was a reaction I hadn't prepared for, and it shattered me more than any confrontation could have. Packing my things felt surreal, each item a reminder of the life I was leaving behind. I moved out with a mix of freedom and guilt churning in my stomach. I believed, foolishly, that Jake's life would crumble without me. I imagined him lost, unable to cope with the emptiness I left behind. But as the weeks turned into months, the truth became impossible to ignore. Jake's life didn't crumble. If anything, it flourished. He found solace in hobbies we never shared, surrounded himself with friends, and earned a promotion at work. His world kept turning, vibrant and full, while mine started to fade. Michael's attention, once so intoxicating, began to wane as the reality of our situation set in. Our conversations, once filled with dreams of the future, became sporadic and strained. The meetings that I had once looked forward to with such eagerness became less frequent, our excuses to see each other more forced, the thrilling connection that had led me to disrupt my entire life dimmed, leaving me to face the consequences of my actions alone. In this stark new reality, I found myself grappling with the aftermath of my choices. The freedom I thought I wanted felt hollow, tainted by the guilt of my betrayal, and the sobering realization that the grass isn't always greener. Michael, the catalyst for my drastic life change, slowly receded into the background of a life I no longer recognized as my own. As the dust settled on my new reality, the financial struggles began to mount. Without Jake's steady income, I found myself scrambling to make ends meet. The jobs I managed to secure were far from the comfort of our shared income. Each day, a relentless cycle of work with little to show for it. The weight of my choices became a constant companion, a reminder of what I had sacrificed for a fleeting illusion of happiness. Social isolation was a harsh reality I hadn't anticipated. Friends who I thought would stand by me chose Jake, their loyalty cementing my solitude. The few who remained were distant, their interactions laced with pity rather than the support I desperately needed. It was a loneliness that permeated every aspect of my life, a stark contrast to the vibrant social circle I once took for granted. Then came the discovery that shattered any remaining illusions I had about Michael and our future. I found out he was seeing someone else, the betrayal cutting deep. When I confronted him, his indifference was a cold splash of reality. "What did you expect?" he asked, his words echoing long after he left. I was left to grapple with the consequences alone, my dreams of us disintegrating into nothing. In my lowest moment, I reached out to Jake, clinging to a hope for reconciliation that was more about escaping my current reality than repairing our past. His response was a gentle yet firm closure. "I've moved on," he said, his voice reflecting a happiness that I once thought could only exist with me. He mentioned someone new, a mutual acquaintance who had been there for him, a stark reminder of the support system I had forsaken. Attempting to reconnect with old friends proved to be another exercise in futility. Their coldness was a clear message. The harm I had caused was irrevocable. Each interaction was a reminder of the ripple effects of my choices, the bridges burned beyond repair. Amidst this turmoil, my performance at work suffered. The stress and distraction took their toll, leading to mistakes I couldn't afford. The day I was let go from one of my jobs felt like hitting rock bottom. The stability I had once taken for granted was now a patchwork of temporary fixes, each day an uncertainty. This chapter of my life was marked by loss, of relationships, stability, and a sense of self. The consequences of my actions were a constant shadow, a lesson learned in the hardest way possible. As I faced each day, I was reminded of the cost of chasing what I thought was happiness, only to find myself further from it than ever before. The morning Jake filed for divorce felt like the world had finally decided to crumble beneath my feet. Sitting across from him in that sterile lawyer's office, the extent of my deception laid bare, I felt the final thread of my old life snap. The settlement was minimal, a reflection not only of the legal judgment, but also of the moral one against my actions. I had lost not just my husband, but everything our life together represented. Then came the final blow, a message from Michael, curt and devoid of any warmth we once shared. He was getting engaged to the other woman. The words on the screen blurred as the reality set in. I was completely alone. Michael, who I had risked everything for, had moved on without a backward glance. The pain of that betrayal was a harsh, cold wake-up call. Forced to confront the consequences of my actions, I moved into a small, rented apartment that stood in stark contrast to the life I once led. It was in this confined space, surrounded by the remnants of my past decisions, that I found myself unable to avoid reflection. The recognition of my mistakes came not as a profound revelation, but as a series of small, painful acknowledgments of the hurt I caused. In an attempt to claw my way out of the pit I had dug for myself, I enrolled in community college. It was a humbling experience, starting over when it felt like everyone else's life had moved on without me. Each day was a struggle, but in those struggles I found a glimmer of hope, a possibility of redemption, and a new path forward. The universe, it seemed, wasn't done with me yet. At a mutual friend's event, I saw Jake and his new partner. The sight of him, visibly happier and moving on, was a gut punch. There he was, living the life we could have had. If only I hadn't strayed. The happiness on his face was a stark reminder of what I had lost, not just in Jake, but in myself. That encounter was a turning point. It forced me to confront the full weight of my actions, not just their impact on me, but on everyone I had hurt along the way. It was a painful realization, one that came with a deep sense of loss, not just for what was, but for what could have been. The moment Jake said farewell, a stark realization pierced through me. It wasn't just the end of our marriage, it was the shattering of the illusion that my actions were without consequences. That realization became the foundation of the new beginning I was forced to embark on, a journey fraught with challenges, but also marked by small victories. Determined to rebuild my life, I threw myself into my studies and part-time jobs with a fervor I hadn't known I possessed. The routine was grueling, and the loneliness palpable, especially during holidays and weekends when the silence of my small apartment was most pronounced. Yet it was in this solitude that I found a sense of purpose, a drive to prove to myself, if no one else, that I could rise from the ashes of my own making. Volunteering at the local shelter became a balm for my guilt-ridden soul. Each act of service, each moment spent helping those less fortunate, felt like a step towards redemption. It was here, among the broken and the healing, that I found a sense of community that had eluded me since the fallout of my actions. Yet, the shadow of my past mistakes lingered, a reminder of the bridges burned and the relationships irreparably damaged. The isolation was a constant reminder of the social circle I had once taken for granted, now permanently diminished. The void left by lost friendships and estranged relationships was a stark contrast to the life I once led, filled with laughter and companionship. Now my only companions were the echoes of what could have been. Then the health scare came, a physical manifestation of the stress and neglect I had subjected myself to. It was a wake-up call, forcing me to confront the reality that I had been avoiding. My well-being mattered. The recovery was slow, a process filled with introspection and a re-evaluation of my priorities. It was during this time that I truly began to understand the magnitude of my journey, the path to self-improvement and healing that lay ahead. Graduating from community college marked a significant milestone in this journey. It was a small achievement in the grand scheme of things, but for me, it represented so much more. It was a tangible symbol of my resilience, my commitment to changing the narrative of my life. Each step forward, no matter how small, was a victory against the despair that had once threatened to consume me. In the end, the realization that Jake's calm farewell was not a defeat, but a silent testament to his strength, and the profound impact of my choices became the cornerstone of my new reality. It was a reality I had to face alone, but one that I was now ready to embrace, armed with the lessons learned and the small victories that signified my resolve to move forward one step at a time. When the job offer came, it felt like a lifeline thrown into the turbulent sea of my life. A position in a completely different field, in a city far from the memories and mistakes that haunted me. It promised a fresh start, a chance to rebuild from the ground up. I didn't hesitate. Packing my belongings felt symbolic, leaving behind not just physical items, but the remnants of a past life that no longer defined me. The move was a blur of activity, a physical manifestation of my desire to move forward. Arriving in the new city, the sense of anonymity was both freeing and daunting. Here, no one knew my story. I was just another face in the crowd, wrestling with the ghosts of my past in silence. Loneliness, however, wasn't confined to the city I left behind. It followed me, a shadow that lingered in the quiet moments. My past actions, the betrayal, and the pain I caused were lessons etched deep in my soul. They taught me the value of trust and the weight of its breach. Starting over wasn't just about a new job or a new city. It was about rebuilding the very foundation of who I was. Efforts to forge new friendships were tentative at first. The fear of repeating past mistakes was a heavy chain around my heart. Each interaction was weighed with the possibility of history repeating itself, yet the human desire for connection, for a sense of belonging, pushed me to reach out despite the fear. As days turned into months, I began to notice a shift within myself. The consequences of my actions, once a source of endless pain, had become the seeds of personal growth. I was not the same person who made those choices. I had grown, evolved from the ashes of my former life. Acceptance came slowly, a gradual realization that while I couldn't change the past, I could shape my future. My focus shifted from what had been lost to what could be gained. I embraced my new routine, finding joy in the simplicity of daily life. The city, once a canvas of anonymity, became a landscape of possibilities. Then, unexpectedly, I encountered someone from my past. Their presence was a stark reminder of the journey I had undertaken. We exchanged pleasantries, but the weight of unspoken words hung heavily between us. They saw the change in me, the distance traveled from the person I once was. It was a bittersweet moment, a reflection of both loss and growth. Reflecting on my journey, I understood the true significance of Jake's calm farewell. It wasn't a sign of defeat, but a powerful acknowledgement of his worth and my downfall. In his silence, there was a lesson of strength and self-respect that I had failed to see at the time. My path to redemption was mine to walk alone. A journey of self-discovery, acceptance, and ultimately forgiveness. The new city, with all its challenges and opportunities, was not just a change of scenery, but a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, capable of rising from the depths of despair to the heights of personal. I glance at the empty chair across from me at our dining room table, my anniversary dinner growing cold. It's the third time this month he's missed dinner, but tonight stings the most. I tell myself it's just the nature of his job, but the small voice in my head whispers doubts I'm not ready to confront. The next day, dragging my disappointment to work like a heavy chain, I find an unexpected comfort in Michael, a colleague from accounting. Unlike the silence that greeted me last night, Michael listens. He asks questions. His interest feels like a bomb, and I soak it up, desperate for any form of connection. Our lunches become a routine. The cafeteria's dull hum fades into the background as our conversations delve deeper, crossing lines I hadn't intended to cross. Text messages follow, innocent at first, then filled with a warmth and excitement long missing from my life. It's a slippery slope, and I'm tumbling down it, unable to stop myself. After a particularly brutal argument where words like neglect and absence are hurled across our kitchen, my husband storms out, leaving silence in his wake. Shaken and seeking solace, I text Michael, "Need to talk. Meet me?" The quickness of his reply is a comfort in itself. The bar's dim lighting casts shadows across our table, creating a world removed from reality. Michael's presence soothes the turmoil within me. Our conversation meanders, a gentle ebb and flow that somehow leads to a moment charged with something more. When his lips meet mine, I'm engulfed in a fire I thought had long since been extinguished. It's wrong, but in that instant, I don't care. Guilt gnaws at me the next morning, yet it's not enough to deter me. Michael and I weave a web of lies, plotting a weekend getaway under the guise of a work conference. The thrill of secrecy lends an edge to our affair, a sharp contrast to the mundanity of my marriage. Our recklessness leaves a trail, though. The forgotten hotel receipt in my purse becomes a ticking time bomb when my husband discovers it. His brow furrows, confusion evident in his eyes. "Work expense?" he asks, holding up the damning piece of paper. I grasp at the first lie that comes to mind, heart racing. He nods, seemingly satisfied, but the doubt lingers, a silent specter between us. Each action, each decision, spirals further from the life I thought I knew, dragging me into a current too strong to resist. Yet, even as I'm swept away, a part of me wonders how long before the truth crashes down, shattering the illusion I've so desperately clung to. The web of lies I've been weaving around my life becomes a second nature, a shadow life lived in the glow of secrecy with Michael. Each excuse to meet him is a thrill that overshadows the gnawing guilt at the back of my mind. Working late, I stay with a practiced ease that doesn't reflect the turmoil inside. Our carelessness grows as the affair deepens, emboldened by the illusion of invincibility. It's at a quaint, out-of-the-way restaurant where the first crack appears. Laughing over shared desserts, Michael's hand finds mine across the table, a moment of bliss shattered when I spot a friend from the corner of my eye. Panic sets in, but I mask it with a smile, later dismissing the encounter as mere coincidence. Just ran into Michael, small world. I laugh it off over the phone, but the seed of suspicion has been planted. The illusion of control slips further when my husband, citing concerns for my safety, installs a tracking app on my phone. I agree without thought, unaware of the noose tightening around the neck of my double life. I continue to meet Michael, blissfully ignorant of digital breadcrumbs I'm leaving behind. Then comes the day my carefully constructed world begins to crumble. In my haste, I leave my phone at home, a window into my betrayal lying unguarded. When I return, the storm has already begun to gather in my husband's eyes. He confronts me with messages laid bare, accusations flying like daggers. They mean nothing, I lie, desperation weaving through my voice, but the foundation of our life together shakes under the weight of my deceit. Confession becomes my only solace, a friend my confidant. But words, once spoken, can't be controlled, and they find their way to my husband, fueling the fire of his suspicion with whispers of truth. Michael and I, lost in our folly, flaunt our affair in daylight, blind to the world's prying eyes. It's during one such daring escapade that fate deals its cruelest hand. Unknown to us, one of my husband's colleagues spots us, a sighting that becomes the final nail in the coffin of my marriage. Each step, each action, feels like moving through a minefield, my life a delicate balance that threatens to topple at the slightest breeze. The air between my husband and me is charged with unspoken truths, our home a battleground of silence and lies. The walls we built together crumble around me, leaving me exposed and vulnerable, a prisoner of my own making. The tension in the air is palpable as my husband's gaze locks onto mine, a mix of confusion and suspicion shadowing his features. We need to talk about Michael, he begins, his voice steady but underlined with an edge that sends a shiver down my spine. I'm caught off guard, scrambling for the right lies to patch the widening cracks in my facade. At a family gathering later that week, my attempts to blend into the background fail miserably when an aunt, perhaps more perceptive than I give her credit for, notes aloud, "You two don't seem as close as you used to be." Her words, innocent as they may seem, feel like an arrow piercing through the thin veil of normalcy I've tried so hard to maintain. Murmurs of agreement from other relatives add weight to her observation, making my stomach knot with anxiety. The unraveling speeds up when I make a critical mistake. Exhausted from constantly covering my tracks, I forget to log out of my email on our shared home computer. The evidence of my betrayal, laid bare in hotel confirmations and exchanges dripping with affection for Michael, waits like a time bomb. It's my husband who discovers it, his face a storm of hurt and anger when he confronts me. "How could you?" he asks, the pain in his voice cutting deeper than any accusation. Cornered with no way out, I confess. The aftermath is a hurricane of emotions, leading to an agreement to separate while we figure out what to do next. It's a mutual decision, but one that leaves me feeling hollow inside. Michael's reaction to the escalation isn't what I expect. Fearful of the consequences, he backs away, his previous assurances of being together wilting under the harsh light of reality. His retreat leaves me more isolated than ever, the ground beneath me crumbling. The legal proceedings that follow are swift, with my husband taking the initial steps towards divorce. Word spreads quickly, our small community choosing sides in a battle I never wanted to fight. The isolation deepens as friends I once considered close turn their backs, siding with the man I betrayed. When the divorce is finalized, the losses tally up to more than just a marriage. Friends, respect, and a sense of belonging in the community I've been part of for years, all gone. The weight of my decisions bears down on me, a constant reminder of the cost of seeking happiness outside the vows I once promised to uphold. The cold morning air bites at my skin as I stand outside the door of what used to be our home, hesitating. The decision to attempt reconciliation with my husband wasn't easy, fueled by nights of solitude and the heavy weight of regret. When the door finally opens, the look on his face tells me all I need to know before a word is spoken. "I've moved on," he says, not unkindly, but firmly. The finality in his voice cuts through any hope I had left. It's over, truly over, and I'm left to navigate the wreckage of my own making. As days turn into weeks, the story of my affair and its fallout spreads through our circle of acquaintances like wildfire. I become a cautionary tale, a whisper of warning against the pursuit of selfish desires at the expense of what truly matters. The realization that my actions have left a mark not just on my life, but on the narrative of our community, is a bitter pill to swallow. Starting over as an uphill battle, the professional respect and camaraderie I once took for granted at work are now overshadowed by whispered conversations and sidelong glances. My reputation, tarnished by my personal failings, bleeds into my career, stalling opportunities and making every day a struggle to prove myself anew. In quieter moments, I allow myself to truly grasp the magnitude of the destruction I've caused. The devastation isn't just in the broken vows and the lost love, it's in the ripple effects of those choices, touching every aspect of my life and leaving a trail of regrets in their wake. Reaching out to mend friendships proves to be another arena of disappointment. Trust, once shattered, isn't easily rebuilt. Conversations are strained, filled with unspoken judgments and the echoes of my mistakes. Loneliness becomes a constant companion, a stark reminder of the cost of my actions. Even the workplace, once a sanctuary of achievement and growth, becomes a field of ice. Colleagues who used to greet me with warm smiles now offer nothing but cold politeness. The affair, and its scandalous details, hang over me like a cloud, coloring every interaction and stifling my progress. In a moment of desperation, I reach out to Michael, hoping for some semblance of the connection we once shared. But his rejection is swift and unambiguous. "We need to move on," he texts back, sealing the door on what I had foolishly thought might be a path to redemption. The final blow comes in the form of financial and legal realities. The divorce, while freeing me from a marriage I had irreparably damaged, also unmoors me from the financial stability and lifestyle I had grown accustomed to. The settlement is fair, but it leaves me in a precarious position, forcing me to downsize my life in more ways than one. As I sit in the modest apartment that now represents my new reality, I'm confronted with the totality of my choices. The journey ahead is daunting, marked by the challenge of rebuilding not just my life, but myself. The path is unclear, but one thing is certain. The consequences of my actions will be a guiding force, a harsh but necessary teacher as I attempt to forge a way forward. The room is uncomfortably warm, or maybe it's just the heat of my embarrassment as I sit across from friends who once celebrated my marriage. Their attempts at polite conversation do little to undercurrent of judgment. I feel their eyes on me, heavy with unasked questions and unspoken pity. It's these moments, surrounded by the ghosts of my past, that guilt and shame wash over me like a tidal wave. In a moment of desperation for closure, I pour my heart into a letter to my husband. My words, a mix of apology and regret, flow onto the page, a tangible representation of the pain I've caused. But the letter remains unanswered, a silent confirmation of the chasm between us that no words can bridge. Seeking solace, I turn to counseling, a decision born out of the realization that I can't navigate this path alone. Each session peels back layers of denial and self-deception, revealing the raw truth of my actions and their impact. It's a painful process, but within that pain lies the hope of learning and growth. The blow comes unexpectedly, a casual scroll through social media unveiling the new chapter in my husband's life. Pictures of him, smiling in content, with someone new, are a stark contrast to the solitude of my own existence. The happiness that once was mine is now shared with another, underscoring the finality of our separation. This discovery marks a turning point, forcing me to confront the reality of my situation. The affair, once a secret escape, now stands as a monument to my folly, a painful lesson on the cost of fleeting desires. It propels me into a journey of self-improvement, a path fraught with challenges but necessary for healing. In an effort to fill the void left by my failed marriage, I throw myself into new activities. Volunteering and hobbies become my refuge, a way to connect with others and rebuild the sense of community I've lost. These small steps forward are my way of atoning, of building something positive from the ruins of my past. Yet, despite these efforts, certain days remain heavy with memories. Holidays, once a time of joy and togetherness, now serve as reminders of what was lost. Anniversaries, once celebrated with love and hope, now pass in silence, marked only by the ache of regret. These moments are stark reminders of the consequences of my actions, a pain that ebbs and flows but never truly fades. Each step forward is a battle, a constant struggle against the shadows of my past. Yet, with each challenge faced, I grow stronger, more resilient. This journey, born from the ashes of my mistakes, is a testament to the possibility of redemption and the relentless pursuit of a better self. The ringing of my phone shatters the silence of the morning, pulling me from the depths of my reflection. It's a call from an old friend, one of many who stepped back when the chaos of my personal life spilled over. My heart races as I answer, half expecting condemnation, yet her voice is warm, hesitant but forgiving. "I think it's time we caught up," she suggests, an olive branch extended across the chasm my actions had created. The conversation is a bittersweet reminder of what was lost, but also of what can be slowly rebuilt. This reconnection sparks a series of tentative meetings with other friends, some of whom are willing to look past my mistakes, while others can't seem to see beyond them. Each encounter is a step on a path littered with the debris of my past decisions, a journey towards redemption that is as uncertain as it is necessary. At work, the atmosphere begins to shift. My dedication to proving myself, to moving beyond the scandal that once defined me, starts to pay off. Colleagues who were once distant gradually offer nods of respect, acknowledgments of my professional achievements that stand apart from my personal failures. It's a slow process, but one that reaffirms the value of perseverance and integrity in the face of adversity. The news of my husband's engagement reaches me unexpectedly, a casual mention in a conversation with mutual acquaintances. The sting of it is sharp, a vivid reminder of the permanence of our separation and the divergent paths our lives have taken. Yet, within this pain, there's also a sense of closure, a confirmation that it's time to fully let go and embrace the future, however uncertain it may be. The decision to sell our shared home is fraught with emotion, each room a tapestry of memories both joyous and painful. But the act of letting go, of physically moving on from a space that holds so much of our shared past, is liberating. It's a tangible step towards independence, towards forging a new identity untethered from the wreckage of my previous choices. As the months pass, I find myself looking inward, examining the depths of my mistakes with a clarity that was previously obscured by denial and regret. This introspection brings a gradual shift in perception, a newfound appreciation for the complexities of life and the importance of living with integrity. It's a painful process, but one that fosters growth and a deeper understanding of myself. Emboldened by this personal evolution, I venture into community activities, seeking connection and a sense of purpose outside the confines of my immediate circle. Volunteering, joining local groups, participating in events, all become avenues for rebuilding not just my social standing but my sense of self. Through these engagements, I form new relationships, bonds forged not in the shadow of my past but in the light of my efforts to contribute, to make amends, and to move forward. The journey is not without its moments of doubt and despair, times when the weight of my past actions threatens to pull me back into a mire of regret. Yet, it's in these moments that I find strength in my resolve to grow, to learn from my mistakes, and to build a future grounded in the lessons of the past. The path ahead is long and fraught with challenges, but it's a path I tread with a newfound sense of purpose, guided by the belief that redemption, though never fully assured, is always worth striving for. I find myself standing at the edge of what feels like a precipice, staring down into the depths of my own soul. The journey here has been long, fraught with missteps and lessons learned in the hardest ways imaginable. It dawns on me, amid the solitude of my reflection, the profound importance of honesty and the ripple effect of our choices on the lives of others. This realization isn't comforting, but it is clarifying, offering a stark view of the path I've walked and the one that lies ahead. The finality of the divorce comes not with a bang, but with a quiet signing of papers. It's an anticlimactic end to a chapter of my life that burned so intensely. Yet, as I walk away from the lawyer's office, a sense of release washes over me. It's over, truly over, and with that closure, I can begin to rebuild in earnest. Rebuilding isn't just about moving on, it's about recognizing the small steps forward, each one a victory against the tide of my past actions. I start to find solace in the progress, however minute it may seem. The appreciation for these moments becomes a new foundation upon which I start to reconstruct my life. An unexpected encounter with a mutual friend of my husband and me serves as a stark reminder of the world I once inhabited. Yet, it's in this interaction, filled with candid discussions of growth and forgiveness, that I see the possibility of mending bridges long thought burned. This conversation, unexpectedly, becomes a beacon of hope. Gradually, I begin to notice shifts in perception, both in how I view myself and how others seem to view me. It's subtle at first, but the change is palpable. There's a cautious rekindling of trust and respect, fragile and precious, that signals a turning point in my journey. Reflection becomes a constant companion, prompting me to confront the person I've become through this ordeal. Acknowledging my faults openly, without the veil of self-justification, offers a chance not just for healing, but for genuine redemption. It's a daunting path, but one I'm now willing to walk with open eyes. The tangible recognition of my efforts to rebuild comes unexpectedly in the form of a promotion at work. It's a milestone that signifies more than just professional achievement. It's a nod to the credibility and integrity I've fought hard to restore. As I stand at this juncture, looking forward with cautious optimism, I'm imbued with a sense of purpose shaped by the harsh lessons of love, loss, and betrayal. The future, once a dark void filled with uncertainty, now holds a glimmer of light. It's not the promise of a path free of obstacles, but rather the assurance that the lessons learned have equipped me with the resilience to face whatever comes next. The narrative of my life, marked by profound mistakes and the journey toward redemption, doesn't end here. Instead, it continues, a testament to the power of resilience and the possibility of forging a new path, grounded in the invaluable lessons of the past. As I step forward, the weight of my experiences becomes not a chain anchoring me to the ground, but a compass guiding me towards a future rich